إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Everybody, am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. It is with great pleasure to have with you again with us for another thought-provoking session. Today's discussion takes us into an area that is both highly relevant and increasingly important. That is agriculture, and how innovation, financial inclusion, agriculture, and Islamic finance can come together to solve real economic problems. Across many developing countries, smallholder farmers remain underserved by formal financial systems. At the same time, access to finance alone is rarely enough. Farmers also need timely information, better agriculture planning, market understanding, and financing structures that are both accessible and ethically aligned. We are very honored to have Mr. Mujtaba Khalid with us today. Mr. Mujtaba Khalid has built an impressive career spanning entrepreneurship, Islamic finance, financial inclusion, capacity building, academia, and public sector advisory. He currently leads Bagh-e. Bagh in Urdu means garden, and E is from the word electronic, an agri-fintech venture incubated at Harvard Innovation Labs, focused on improving financial access and farm productivity for smallholders, farmers through ethical digital financing and agronomic scheduling. This initiative was also recognized as the winner of the Central Bank of Malaysia Global Impact Challenge 2025. Previously, Mr. Mujtaba Khalid served as head of Islamic Finance Center at BIBF in Bahrain, where he led major initiatives including the official AAOIFI e-learning platform and the development of an Islamic banking e-simulation. His professional journey has also included work with the UK Islamic Finance Council, Islamic Relief International, and COMSATs, together with engagement involving central banks and financial inclusion initiatives internationally. He holds a master's degree in public administration from Harvard Kennedy School, where he was an Edward Mason Fellow, and a BSc in accounting and finance from the London School of Economics. Mr. Muttaba, we are very pleased to have you with us today. The floor is yours. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this. And when I got the message to do this, so I've done a lot of Islamic finance trainings and capacity building programs, and I've done a lot of technology ones. But how to mix technology, Islamic finance, and smallholder farmers? Yes, I do have a startup which I incubated at the Harvard Innovation Labs, which is an agri-fintech. So it delves into agriculture, but my co-founder is the main guy for agriculture. So I've spent a few days on how to go about this, right? And my first thought was to go about this with a bit of humbleness, where I will share some data with you. So I'm going to share some data points. I'm going to share some facts, which can highlight the opportunity we have as Muslims, as especially in Pakistan. I'm a Pakistani, as Ms. said. So born and raised in Lahore. And then I would leave, then at the end, I'll show you how what I thought was the best way to approach this issue. And I'll leave it to the audience to make their own judgment, right? So this is about a half an hour, 40 minutes session. If I talk fast, please stop me. Sometimes when I uh, start having fun, I start talking fast. You can see my screen. So we'll start with Islamic economy, then we'll go to Islamic demographics, then Pakistan specific. We'll go into Pakistan specific demographics, and the case for Islamic fintech and agriculture. Um, so the Islamic economy consists of multiple things, we are 2 billion Muslims in the world. Food, of course, when 2 billion people have to eat specific food, so food is a big part of it. But the biggest is Islamic finance. Clothing is also a big part. I mean, I'm sure all of you have heard that even Western designers have come into halal clothing or halal fashion. Tourism is a big part as well. Apart from the fact that Muslims go for Umrah and Hajj, that's a huge part. But also, believe it or not, there are hotels in Turkey, Indonesia, Malaysia, which are very specific for Muslims and promote family. And what does that mean? So if you are an unmarried couple, you can't buy a room or you can't stay there. They don't serve alcohol, they serve halal food. So their tourism is also a big part. But also religious tourism in Iran, in Saudi, and all of that. Sorry, I think someone's mic is on. If you don't mind, muting yourself. I do apologize, but it's just continuously. Media and recreation is also a big part, a growing part, by the way. Back in COVID times, I remember this is when it really picked up. We were all stuck at home, so all I would do is watch. I don't know if you guys remember that Turkish drama called Istanbul. But that's just one part of it. There's so much more. And the biggest opportunity, according to, at least, I don't want to say according to me, but I think is children's media. Islamic children's media, which is like our brothers and sisters in Indonesia and Malaysia are doing a great job on YouTube, because I have kids and all they do is, watch YouTube. And I'm just trying to convince them, rather than watching Mr. Beast, why don't you watch something specific to Muslims as well? Now, I don't want them to stop and be in their own bubble. And that's a mistake Muslims make as well, that, they shun the world. And I personally believe that's not the way to do it. But that doesn't mean that you are not proud of your identity or being a Muslim. So I'm trying to teach that to my daughters these days. Halal pharma is also a big part, where they try to use prophetic, treatments, non-alcoholic medicine. But also, although Islam is not that strict, obviously, if it's a genuine issue and there's a medicine which contains alcohol, Islam should not, and I don't think people should view Islam as being very restrictive. It does not stop you from doing it. And cosmetics is the same thing, especially for, not the perfume side, but also from makeup and stuff. You have certain products which Western pharmaceuticals or cosmetic companies use pork or alcohol and stuff like that. So, there's an alternative. This is the halal economy globally, or the subsectors. But what does that mean in terms of numbers? And I took this from the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 25-26. And like I said, obviously, and I want to show you the opportunity. So by 2024, this was about $1.5 trillion halal food, just halal food. I'm talking about just halal food opportunity or market. And within 2-3 years, it's going to go to almost $2 trillion by 2029. I believe, yes, by 2029 is going to go to $2 trillion. You can imagine the opportunity, not only as Muslims, but also as a country. Even Pakistan can leverage off these opportunities. Why aren't we leveraging off these opportunities, right? And I'll tell you who is leveraging off these opportunities. They're not Muslim countries. So this is again from the same report. And the top 5 largest exporters to Muslim countries, OIC countries, are China, Brazil, India, US, and Turkey. Right? So fifth, obviously, is Turkey is a Muslim nation, a secular Muslim nation, but a Muslim nation nonetheless. But the first 4 are non-Muslim nations, even though India has a substantial Muslim population, but it's a non-Muslim country. I'll tell you something. So Brazil is the largest exporter of halal meat in the world. And India is the largest exporter of halal beef in the world. And in India, as we all know, beef consumption of beef is not allowed. So they've leveraged this opportunity, and I think this is a huge opportunity for Muslims as well, Muslim countries, Muslim entrepreneurs in Western countries to look at these, because we understand the pain points better than, potentially better than, some non-Muslims. So why can't we serve this? So that's one of my propositions, that let's look at the halal economy, right? And obviously the top five importers are Saudi, UAE, Turkey, Indonesia, and Malaysia. No surprises, they're big economies. And that's about 421.5 billion OIC imports just in the halal sectors. So almost half a trillion. So this is from 25, 26, so probably 24, 25 numbers. So this is half a trillion just importing, right? Not what they're making themselves, just imports a year, which is a substantial opportunity. Islamic finance is by far the biggest subsector. Even though it's extreme growth slowed over the past 10 years, but it's still seen very decent growth in terms of, you know, every year on year of an average of 15.6%, right? Which is by no means small. So currently it's about $6 trillion, $6.3 trillion. That's the value of Islamic finance. And by 2029, which is in 3 years, it's going to be around $9.7 trillion, right? I think this is a conservative number. I think it's going to be much more than that, because obviously a lot of Muslims, like, just if you look at Pakistan, for example, I'll tell you the opportunity in Pakistan by end of 2027, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if my apologies if I've gotten this wrong. But by end of 2027, the State Bank of Pakistan wants all banks to be Islamic, right? So Pakistan is a half, almost, if you include the gray economy, Pakistan is more than half $1 trillion economy, right? 500 billion plus, right? You can imagine the opportunity there is just for how Pakistan will impact the global Islamic finance economy, right? Islamic finance specifically. And why do I say it's so not just that? So that's one part. I think Pakistan will play a major part, I personally believe. But also because if you look at the growth of Islamic finance, the best growth of Islamic finance as an industry was between, I would say, 2001 to about 2013. And that was when the globe was facing a commodity super cycle, which means the commodity prices were at the highest they've been in a long time. And it makes sense, you know, oil is at that point, and I think for the next 20, 30 years still, it will remain the largest driver of an economy, right? And Muslim countries are the largest producers, but not just oil. If you look at agricultural economy, you have Pakistan, Bangladesh, and I'll show you this in a couple of slides. You have those countries which are huge agriculture, Malaysia, Indonesia, crude palm oil, all of these commodities, you know. So a lot of Muslim countries are blessed, or you can say, you know, however you want to put it. I mean, they are blessed by it, but they've not done much with it. But they are blessed with commodities, a lot of them, right? So now let's go into Islamic demographics as Muslims. And again, some people see it as a threat, but I think it is a fantastic opportunity. Vast majority of Muslims around the world are younger than 50. With the largest, sorry, I've got two screens, so I'm going to show you here. With the largest 33% from ages 0 to 14. And this tells me two things. And, you know, the second largest between 15 to 49, Hindus are the largest in this space. But what this tells me is the 0 to 14, 33%, that Muslims in the future will make a substantial chunk of consumers, you know, from 0 to 14 when they go into an age when they start earning, right? So Islamic finance can play a big part in that, you know, or can leverage that opportunity. And one of the interesting things I was a long time ago, a British colleague, I was talking to him, and he said that I've changed a lot of things in my life as a customer, but one of the things I've never changed, and he was an old gentleman, was my bank, right? So this is an opportunity for Islamic banks to get young Muslims early, And that relationship generally stays. Very few people change their banks completely. They can go on to a new product, but their main bank remains, at least largely, right? So I think this is another a fantastic opportunity. When we look at the Muslim as a percentage of total population in countries, this is from 2020. This will have changed as well. Uh, but obviously you've got the usual suspects, which is Pakistan, Saudi, Bangladesh, the GCC, Egypt, Morocco, Indonesia, Malaysia. So you have those countries with a substantial Muslim population. But this part of Africa, right, and the Horn of Africa and just below it, people don't realize that has a substantial Muslim population or a potential Muslim market, right? Uh, so that's something to think about as well, right? Um, and then we go on to, and so that's an opportunity, not just for Islamic banking, but Islamic finance, or sorry, not just about Islamic finance, but just as a whole halal economy, right? Um, India obviously is also a big part, a huge Muslim population, and also in Western countries, you have young affluent Muslims, so there is an opportunity again. But and I see this as an opportunity, by the way. So I'm showing you the percentage of unbanked by region. I personally see this as an opportunity. If you look at currently, it's unfortunate, but I think again, like I said, I see it as an opportunity. Remember, I showed you this this diagram of Muslims. Just keep this in mind, please, because I want to show you the global map next 3-4 slides about different things. You can see in East Asia and Southeast Asia this is about 3-4 years old, or maybe 5 years old, this graph, but it gives you an idea. So I just want you to have an idea. 876 million adults are unbanked. In Central Asia, 193 million adults are unbanked, right? In Sub-Saharan Africa, 326 million, about 80% are unbanked. Now this has dropped significantly, but it's still well above 50%, well above 50% in Sub-Saharan Africa. Middle East, 136%. South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and unfortunately, we'll see it in the next few slides later on, that Pakistan makes a big chunk of this, 58%, which is 612 million. So a total about unbanked or underbanked are 2.45 billion adults around the world. And I would say a big part, I don't want to assume something, but a huge majority of them are Muslims, right? Let's just minus, let's say, Latin America. A lot of these countries are Muslim majority. Remember that I told you about that graph? So there is a large unbanked, or I'll say underbanked population as well among Muslims, which is an opportunity, I personally think. Now let's look at GDP of countries as a percentage, or what percentage of a GDP of a country makes of agriculture, forestry, and fishing, right? And again, remember I showed you this graph, Muslims? Look at this. So Pakistan is a huge percentage, but look at the African nation. And I think personally, again, I don't like talking with conviction because I always leave room for being wrong. But I personally think from 2040 to 2050 onwards, it's Africa's century, right? Africa is changing in ways we can't even imagine. And I'll show you one case study later on in the slides, how they deal with their own specific problems. And that's why I think, again, not to go off on a tangent, but whenever I talk to very senior people in Islamic banking and finance, I tell them, please try not to copy paste Western products and try to make them Sharia compliant. Muslims have their specific problems, which need specific solutions, right? And I think that is where we should move now as an industry. So yes, we see that as interest-bearing savings account. How can we make it Sharia compliant? And a credit card, how can we make it Sharia compliant? Yes, we need those things, but now it's time as an industry, because it's been what, 50 years now, more than 50 years. The Islamic industry set up in the 70s, so more than 50 years. The first Islamic bank, proper Islamic bank, Dubai Islamic, then so before that was Mujtaba in Egypt, but that wasn't a bank, that was more of a financing institute. Dubai Islamic, then Bahrain Islamic Bank. So all of these were in the 70s. So it's about time the industry, looks at products which are very specific to Muslims and their needs and their problems. So I think, again, there's an opportunity here. Agriculture is a big part of their percentage. And one of the things I was thinking when I was looking at this map, um, because yes, I mentioned earlier that oil is still going to be a huge part of how economies grow. But I was thinking that in the future, because Muslims are a younger population, a lot of their economies are dependent on agriculture. I personally believe in the future, uh, like right now, Muslims are known for, or rich Muslims are attributable to oil. I think in the future, the Muslim world will feed the entire world. I personally strongly believe that now, because a lot of Western countries are moving away. They're putting data centers in fields, right? You can't eat data centers. You don't need data centers to survive, but you sure need food to survive, right? And with data centers going up in the US, then it will start in Europe, and all of that. I think the Muslim world will feed this, will be the breadbasket of the entire world, which will give us, if done well, could give us a lot of leverage. And lastly, I'm almost done with maps. So if you don't like geography, I'm almost done with maps. Um, Total number of internet users. And again, Muslims are a substantial chunk as a number. So maybe, Pakistan, this is slightly older. So Pakistan might have like 9.2 million internet users. So as a percentage of their population, maybe America has a higher percentage of their population connected to internet, let's say. But as a number of people, if you look at all Muslims, there are a substantial number of internet users. So that's another opportunity, right? So three opportunities I see: underbanked, agriculture, internet usage. Right. Now let's look at Pakistan. Let's look at our country as specific to Pakistan. Again, alhamdulillah, Pakistan is blessed. I say so. Again, it's how you look at something, right? Some people say it's the youth bomb or the ticking time bomb. When how will you give them um, jobs, and if you don't give young people jobs, there can be unrest. So obviously, policymakers have to address that. And I personally think, and obviously, I've worked with a few initiatives with the Islamic government. So I think jobs will not be enough to facilitate the young people. I think they need support to towards entrepreneurship, right? And the internet and tech is a huge part, can play a huge role in this. But back to these numbers. So Pakistan, about 33% plus are under 14, and more than 50% are under 30, right? So again, blessed with if done well, if leveraged properly, a huge opportunity for Pakistan to play a role, not just for the benefit of Pakistan, but possibly the benefit of the world. If you look at the seventh agriculture census 2024 of Pakistan, so 58% are services, 24%, almost 25 or one-fourth of our economy is agriculture based, right? But what was interesting on this census was that 90% of our farmers are smallholder farmers. So only 10% are large holders. Excuse me. And smallholder farmers, less than 10 acres of land. But 90%, and I'll also come on to this later, but smallholder farmers anywhere in the global south and developing countries are not as efficient. Their yield isn't as high. And we have 90% of them. So imagine if we make them 30% more productive, just increase 20 to 30% of their yields. Imagine the impact we can have on our GDP, or imagine the impact we can have on the local GDP, access to schooling, because if a farmer has more cash flow, he or she can spend it on food, so better access to calories, more, let's say, better education for their kids, better health services, all of which leads to more consumption, right? So imagine the impact we can have on our GDP if we make these smallholder farmers just slightly more. I'm not saying rocket science where you make them 100% more, productive or increase their yields by hundreds of percent. So like, make them Netherlands. Even 20-30% can have a substantial impact on them, on all of us, by the way. Now, if you look at technology or fintech, this is from the Islamic Fintech report, and Pakistan comes number 8 out of the top 10 Islamic fintech countries. According to them, the market size is USD $3.6 billion, or was in 24-25, and it's positioned to grow to about $5.8 billion, which is by no means small. Bahrain's entire economy is $2-3 billion, right? So just the fintech sector in Pakistan is bigger than that, right? And it makes sense. I mean, look, so I got this from the State Bank of Pakistan's payment systems quarterly review of Q3 this year. So this is the latest one. And one of the things which is very interesting, which I saw, was that in the third quarter, as compared to last year's, so it went from these value, let's just forget value, the number of bars represent the volume. So volume went of these RAST payments, just the RAST payment, which for those who don't know is a payments gateway by the State Bank of Pakistan to make online instant payments, right? So the volume, so 371 million people or transactions were done in Q3 last year. And this year, Q3, it was 742 million transactions. So there is adoption. And I'm not even bringing in Easy Pesa, Jazz Cash, all of that stuff. This is just the RAST payment, right? Is 742 million. That's a substantial increase in just 1 year in any country, right? According to the State Bank of Pakistan, mobile banking registrations and app registrations was in the first quarter of 2026 was 132 million. That's a 37% increase from the same quarter last year. Digital channel transactions, so all the transactions, Easy Pesa, all of this, I think this includes credit card, but I'll have to check, so my apologies if I don't know this. From the previous quarter, was 64 trillion rupees, and this quarter it was 68. Oh, sorry. So this is first quarter of 2026. So first quarter of 2026, the digital channel transaction was 68 trillion, and the quarter before that was 64 trillion. So 4 trillion increase in just 1 quarter, rupees, which is again substantial, right? So these are positives, but obviously, there are challenges, right? Like I mentioned earlier as well. If we compare Pakistan to just our neighbors, I'm not comparing it to the US, I'm not comparing it to Europe. So we substantially lag behind in terms of people having access to financial, let's say, bank accounts, financial products, and so on and so forth. I mean, the positive I guess the only positive I see is that people are embracing digital payments, digital financing, right? But even with countries like Nepal and Bangladesh, we substantially lag. This is from the World Bank's database, but this is between 2014 and 2024. And granted, the past 2 years, this might have changed, because look at this. But again, I would be very surprised if it changed and was equal to, let's say, Sri Lanka or India, right? It might have changed slightly to 40%, let's say, but still very much lower than the other countries around us. Again, I'm not, unfortunately, comparing us to America or the EU. We're comparing to Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, India, right? So again, but like I mentioned earlier, it's an opportunity. It is an opportunity to bring these people into the financial net or the financial bracket using innovation. Another thing which is unfortunate is, not unfortunate, but is an opportunity, I think, is if we compare our real yields per hectare, tons per hectare. So Netherlands is a very small country in Europe. It has 9.39 tons per hectare yield, while Pakistan has a 3.51 tons per hectare yield of wheat. Wheat is a crop we are known for, or are substantially, now we have to import wheat as well, right? And attainable yield, we are lower than our attainable yield. So this isn't like potential yield. Attainable yield is that given the resources we have, given the climate, given the soil type, we can grow 4.76 tons per hectare, right? This is not doing anything. This is with our current resources, we are still inefficient, unfortunately. If you look at Netherlands, on the other hand, they are surpassing, or outperforming their attainable yield. So given their resources, they should be making 8.5 tons per hectare, but they're making 9.39 tons per hectare. So look at the opportunity we have to to do good, to improve. Improvement is an opportunity, like I've said multiple times. So not to sound as a broken record, but it's an opportunity. This is a big opportunity. I've mentioned smallholder farmers as well. If we use smallholder farmers, if we make them more productive, we can do a lot more with what we have. Again, I'm not saying that we bring in robots tilling the, the soil and stuff like that, just with what we have. Now, I wanted to bring a case study or a very small example, right, of how technology can play a huge role in financial inclusion, especially for a rural population or rural people, right? So the things I've mentioned show two things. I personally think that they are banking customers moving away from the conventional practices of banking, like going into a branch. I'm not saying it's completely finished, but I showed you the RAST payment, numbers. They were increasing, and state bank numbers are increasing. All of that, people are, adopting more to digital innovation when it comes to payments, financial products. So people are moving away from the conventional banking channels, right? That's one. This is an opportunity for us to transform smartly. By the way, I do apologize. I have both screens on full. Do you have any questions, or should we leave the questions to the end? If you don't mind, let's leave the questions towards the end, if that's okay with everyone.
Yes, sir. Kindly
Now,
proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
thank you, Ben. So if we look at Kenya, right? By the way, I mean, I always love asking people this question, especially in Europe and the US, that which is the best country when it comes to fintech? And some would say Switzerland, some would say this, but it's Kenya, by the way. For the adoption of fintech, financial technology, users, transactions, innovation. So this is M-Pesa. M-Pesa started in the early 2000s, or yes, 2005, or maybe below. So the whole idea of how it started was very fascinating. This is when, we have those Nokia phones, not the smartphones, right? And farmers had these phones as well, some of these farmers. Now in Kenya, the road networks were really bad. So farmers had to go towards the cities to sell their produce, right? So they didn't have centers like Pakistan has mandi, which we call mandis. So they would mostly have to go to cities long distances, right? And because they were unbanked, they would have lots of cash. When you're selling, even if you have 1 rupee, someone pays you 10 rupees, someone pays you this. So you have a lot of cash you have to carry back to your village, right? And of course, it's not safe. You can lose, you can get robbed, and stuff like that. And so what farmers started to do, which was very fascinating, they would take that money and buy mobile top up, like credit, and put that on their phones. Those, not smartphones, those phones. And so they would have, let's say, $1,000 worth of credit on their phone. And when they'd go back to their villages, instead of paying in money, what they would do is, how you have this code where you can transfer credit, like *101 star. I want to give this person $10, 10 star, the person's numbers. They started transacting like that. If I'm a farmer and I owe someone, let's say $5, instead of paying him money, I would transfer $5 credit to that person, right? And it really picked up, and M-Pesa saw this as an opportunity, and they started giving services like if you um, dial star 111 star $10 star something, this will 10 piece or $10 will go to your savings account, right? We'll open that digital saving account. If you put this, this will be a transfer, this will be XYZ. So they leveraged off that, and they had momentum when smartphones came in. Everyone adopted them. And the fascinating thing is, this dark red line, it took 80% of Kenyans 20 years to get a radio. So 80% of the population had a radio, took them 20 years. In M-Pesa adoption, 80% of the households, it took almost 4 years, just 4 years to get 80% of the households to use M-Pesa, right? Which is fascinating, right? That, and I love a quote which I've heard with multiple times been used by many people is that nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, right? And I think in Pakistan there are three things that whose time has come: digital innovation and Islamic finance, right? And possibly agri-tech as well. I say possibly because it's still happening. I don't know, but Islamic finance and digital innovation is pretty much happening in a great way. But so what is the solution to Pakistan's issues or global South issue? By the way, it's not specific to Pakistan. Even now, if you go to Nigeria, smallholder farmers are inefficient. If you go to Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, you have smallholder farmers who struggle to get credit. You have smallholder farmers who are inefficient, right? As compared to industrial farmers or large farmers who can afford tractors, who can afford the best inputs. Now, I personally think the conventional interest-based model just won't work for agri-financing. And my learning and my reasoning is that the cash cycle farmers face is very cyclical, right? So farmers, if you go to any village in Pakistan or anywhere, for about 1 month, they're like the king of the world, right? So when harvest happens, they have a lot of cash. This is cash, right? So they have cash. But towards pre-sowing, they all of a sudden they need, to pay in advance for fertilizer, sometimes for labor, stuff like that. And all of a sudden their cash cycle, their just cash reserves or whatever you want to call them, drops significantly for the 3-4 months that is a crop cycle. And again, at harvest, they get money, and for a month or two, they're feeling great about themselves. If you have an interest-based system that says, like a microfinance, for example, that says that pay me every month X amount, they're already strapped with cash, right? And now you expect them to pay every month, XYZ. So I think it's a bit hard for them to, work with an interest-bearing system. That's number one, smallholder farms. And also banks, smallholder farmers are low risk, high risk, low collateral, right? So unfortunately, I've seen this in a lot of Islamic banks as well. If you have collateral, they will treat you much differently. And I don't blame them to an extent because, again, Islamic banks are also a business. They're not charitable institutions. Obviously, there is people like Dr. Abdul have done great, Kanabul Hassan. But in general, Islamic banks are a commercial entity, so they want to reduce their risk exposure and have Western, let's say, models of risk. Smallholder farmers are not even categorized as high risk. They're beyond risk. So they're just outside just the risk framework because they have zero collateral to give. And they're very high risk because, what if a flood comes? You have the field out, you have 10 acres of land with wheat on it, and all of a sudden a flood comes and all your land's gone, right? All your produce is gone, which was about to be harvested. And that has happened, by the way, in Pakistan. I mean, since I've started working, I've seen that happen, unfortunately. So banks, especially interest-based banks, literally don't consider smallholder farmers. And again, I want to be very clear, this is not a Pakistan-specific problem. I've seen this in Central Asia, Indonesia, and in a lot of developing countries. You have SME financing would be the lowest portfolio. And Islamic fintech solution might help, right? And this is what we've tried to do. So currently, according to the World Bank, there is a $170 billion a year unmet financing gap between smallholder farmers that smallholder farmers face, or that farmers face, specifically smallholder or medium-holder farmers. And this is the largest in Asia, which is $126 billion a year, and in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is $11 billion a year. And this is where we try to propose something, a solution when Bagh-e comes in. Bagh-e provides interest-free, ring-fenced digital financing to smallholder farmers and combine it with tailored best practices and access to the market. What does that mean? How do we do it? So we have an integrated digital financing ecosystem. So it's 3 apps working together, which connects the farmer, the input vendor, and the consultant, an agriculture consultant who knows about what to do at what time, what's best for the fields. It's an expert, agri-expert, right? So when we onboard the farmer, we take in the geolocation of the farmland, the soil type, and the water type. And based on that, our system tells them, okay, in this month or this season, you can grow, let's say, potatoes or corn. And let's say the farmer chooses corn. So our app makes a schedule of best practices he or she must follow, a weekly best practices to ensure optimal yield. So based on the geolocation, the weather, the soil type, the water type, when to irrigate the land, when to sow, when to put the seeds, when to put what input, right? So let's say the 3rd week, our app tells them that you need 3 bags of fertilizer, right? So that's where the input vendor comes in. Based on the geolocation, the farmer is told that this is the closest approved input vendor to you. And then order number is generated. The order ID goes to the let's say the vendor, and the vendor knows that I only need to give these 2 products, nothing more, right? Just these 2 products for that specific step as per the schedule. And then both on their respective apps take a picture and upload it. So we know as a measure of risk management that yes, this transaction did take place. And this is how it's done for all the inputs. And then we have the consultant who knows that, okay, I have 10, 20, 30 farmers under me. So here it shows 4 farmers. It has 4 tasks, pending tasks. If the consultant clicks on this app, he sees what are the tasks. He can go do visits and see why are the tasks being done? Have they been done properly? And again, if there's any issues farmers are facing, they can access the consultant through the app. He can come to the farm, or he can talk on the phone through WhatsApp or whatever. And the business model is simple, like I said. So digitally, we digitally give inputs to farmers. We give them a best practices schedule. Then what we do is we take all the produce for all the farmers, rather than a farmer trying to sell to someone and not having negotiating power. We aggregate all the produce, and then we have a substantial amount, and then we sell it to mills at a better rate, right? And at the end, we do a profit share. About 70 to 80%, depending on the crop, goes to the farmer, and 30% we keep. So this is a Musharaka model. For those who know Islamic finance, Musharaka is when 2 partners put in money, effort, all of that into a venture, and then they do a profit share. So the farmers, so we don't finance labor, we don't finance the water part or the diesel of their tractors and etc. Because we saw that is a huge risk. It's so variable. Inputs are not variable. So for 1 acre of land, depending on where it is, it's fairly straightforward of what inputs are required. And as mentioned earlier, so we have a bit of traction. Incubated the Harvard Innovation Labs. We're live with the Google and Apple Play stores. We've done pilots with 400 acres in Punjab, Pakistan, a village called Habili Lakhan, with Syngenta and Cargill. Alhamdulillah, we won the Bank Negara Central Bank of Malaysia's Global Impact Challenge in November last year, which was, by the way, presented by the Prime Minister of Malaysia. and we came second out of 2,600 fintech, Pakistani fintechs in Allied Bank's financial innovation hackathon. So that's a bit about what we're doing. And I will stop now, I suppose, and open to questions, shall the chat has some questions. I can just check. So from Mr. Shahid Raza, how Islamic agriculture finance is strengthening farmers. So for example, like I said, I think this is our hypothesis. Firstly, farmers, it's very hard for them to get interest-based financing because every month, if they have to pay microfinancing, something, etc., it's very hard for them to pay that. So we have to take risk in their venture, so to say. But to be honest, I mean, I think it works fantastically because it is in our inherent interest that farmers do well. Like if I was giving an interest-based financing, I don't care what the farmer does, how he does it, or she does it. I just want my interest and my principal, right? But when I'm doing a profit share, it's in my interest. So every 6 months or so, we get together and decide and figure out how to make farmers based on last crop cycles data even more efficient because we're doing a profit share. So 30% of $100 of profit is worse off than 30% of $1,000 of profit, for example. If I'm doing an interest-based financing, I'm just getting like 100. Even if I'm getting $100 of interest, I don't care, right? So that's one way Islamic agriculture finance could help in how many
Thank you,
banks have
Mujtaba.
so
No, please continue.
I'm just this
Apologies.
one. How many bank support to farmers? Like I mentioned earlier, so it's not a Pakistan specific issue, but banks anywhere um, do are hesitant to support smallholder farmers, and the reason I told you because they view them as risky. Now, having said that, we've had great conversations with the State Bank of Pakistan, which has been pushing banks, and they've also connected us to banks to try to work together. And they've launched State Bank of Pakistan has launched a few of those schemes as well. And we gave our feedback. The scheme was for covering 1 million rupees for a year for a farmer. But we told them, look, if you want to have a proper impact, right, given the current inflation, for a high yielding crop, just for one crop cycle, the per acre cost can be 1 lakh to 1 lakh 50 rupees, right? If you're doing 1 million a year, right? So that means only in one cycle you're covering less than 10 acres, right? That's not very substantial. So we give them a model where you start with working with medium scale farmers, make them more productive, and then go down. So if a medium scale farmer currently is at 15 acres, we said that should be considered 33% of the financing, 33% the bank should cover, and 33% the state bank should cover. So from 15, he or she goes to 45 acres, right? And he or she has skin in the game rather than just saying, here you go, we cover 1 lakh, 1 million, so which is 10 lakhs for the year. You have skin in the game, and you will see how much drastically that will change the agri landscape.
So we have another very good question from Mr. On Heather Naqvi. He's saying that what are your thoughts on this microfinance bank charges 40% markup even if they are financing on gold back?
Yeah.
Your take on it.
Yeah. So when I first read about Dr. Yunus and microfinance, I was like, wow, this is great. This is an amazing thing that's been happening. But then when I read more about it, right, I was like, wait, something doesn't make sense. And this is not just about Dr. Yunus, and I don't want to single him out, anything, but it is an issue. They say again, microfinance entities say that we're taking a risk, even if it's gold back with smallholder farmers who are not in a position to go get any financial product, right? And again, I've mentioned that, yes, that's true, but why don't you take a risk with them in the venture? So okay, you're taking a risk, but the payoff is much huger for you as well as an entity if they do well. Why not? Why are you looking at it from a zero-sum game that we give money, we want our money back at this percentage because out of these 5 farmers, 3 of them are going to default. But why? If you look at the complete, let's say, supply chain of agriculture, right? So you help them with their yields, you help them with through inputs, and then you help them sell, right? By the way, easier said than done. We've been doing this for a year and a half, almost 2 years now. Easier said than done, not that easy, especially in rural areas, right? Where you have the middleman, the Aarti, right? The Aarti will support them when um, a farmer's daughter is about to get married, so he or she can get loans. An Aarti will help them when no other people will. So it's very hard, by the way, and we're trying to figure out a model to work there with them because obviously middlemen create inefficiencies. You can say that, but currently there is no alternative. It goes back to the whole idea, and I'm sure On knows this as well, given his experience in Islamic finance, where everyone sometimes badmouths commodity murabba, that is the most used system, da, da, da. But then what is the alternative to that, right? So right now, Aarti, what is the alternative to Aarti? Right? There is none. Especially talking about smallholder farmers right now, because microfinance, obviously, no or very few farmers who are on 100 acres of land would need microfinancing, right? They can go to Habib Bank and get a bigger loan from going from 100 to 200, all right, and using collateral, tractors, getting more, etc. But smallholder farmers will have that issue.
Thank you, Mujtaba. Well, I have few questions for you for this very thoughtful conversation. Uh, my first question is regarding that many smallholder farmers in our country and other developing countries lack digital literacy and formal documentation. How does this Bagh-e going to address these impediment blocks or barriers when onboarding farmers onto the platform?
So there's two things. Yes, digital literacy, not so much, because you'd be surprised how many. I don't have a TikTok, right? You'd be surprised at how many farmers I've met in Punjab who have TikToks, right? So digital literacy in terms of using smartphones is still there. But having said that, it's a very valid point. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to we're working on it as we speak, right? Is using voice-enabled AI, but on their WhatsApp. So instead of them coming to us, so this whole app which I showed you, our vision is that I want there to be no app, right? So instead of farmers coming to us digitally, downloading the app, onboarding, all of that, we give them a number, which is Baghi's number. And you know how sometimes when we're talking to friends, we send voice notes? They send voice notes in Urdu, Punjabi, English maybe, but Urdu or Punjabi or Sindhi or Saraiki, right? And they say, okay, I have this much land. What do you suggest? Stuff like that. We we have our consultants on ground. So yes, there is an issue, but I mean, if we were having this conversation maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I would be like, yeah, I don't know what to do. Like we go for capacity building, we try to teach them. But right now, we don't need to change their habit. We can meet them where they are. We can meet them with voice-enabled AI, in their language, and we don't have even need an app, right? A lot of banks I've seen in Pakistan as well, a lot of banks have gone to WhatsApp, and you can get your basic stuff right now, like you can get your account details on WhatsApp. You can give your CNIC number and say, this is my account number, how much money do I have, stuff like that, right? So why not? So why not have a conversational financial AI model that helps farmers and link it with people on the ground, physical people, not the old model where you have a bank branch and they have to come to you and then they have to wait in lines only to be rejected. So I think that's one of the ways according to us, that we're trying to tackle that problem. I'm sure there are better ideas than us, but I'm just showing how we're trying to address this issue.
Thank you. So my next question is regarding Sharia compliant financing. Uh, as you have mentioned in your presentation as well, that Bagh-e compliance, Sharia compliant financing with agricultural resources and crop optimization guidance. How does this integrated approach translate into measurable impact for farmers on the ground?
It's very easy for us to measure the previous or the average per acre yield. So, for example, and again, because right now we have more, not more, all our experiences in Punjab, and Punjab has good data availability. I'm not sure about Balochistan or Sindh or KPK. I'm sure there is as well, but there is average yield data available for every quarter, every year, right? Um, and you can see, okay, so our farmers on this type of farmer, smallholder farmer on average for this area, let's say had a yield. I'll give you an example. So our latest crop cycle was corn, which is maize, right? And the area where we're at, the average yield has been about 75 to 80 mun per acre, while our guys average 90 plus. So 90, I want to say 95 to 99, but I'll just say 90 plus, right? Because there were one or two who weren't as good. But that's how we address the risk as well, by the way. So you know how I showed you that schedule of best practices. One thing I
Yes.
didn't mention and how to manage our risk. If a farmer misses three of those steps, so let's say the first step and the second step in a row, we just don't do more financing. So rather than taking the risk like a bank would do that with the entire financing amount, we look at the behavior of the farmer. And if our consultant says that this farmer is not serious, right? He or she's only gotten, let's say, one, two, or three inputs required, not the entire money. And we say, okay, fine, we won't work with that, right? So we manage our risk in that way as well. So not just like, yes, we've sold this to the person, but also how are they doing? How's their behavior? Right? So yeah, back to your point, measurable impact is just one measurable impact at the moment, which is increased yields. Because our hypothesis is if yields increase, that means farmers make more money than previously. And that's how our measure.
That's really encouraging figure. And from a microfinance bank's perspective, uh, I have a specific question that where do you see the greatest opportunity for collaboration? Could a platform like Bagh-e help an MFP not only with the farmer acquisition, financial inclusion, but also with credit assessment, post disbursement, monitoring, the earning warning indicators, and ultimately reduction in portfolio risk?
Yes, so that's exactly where we come in because so we can only finance so many people because we're not a bank, right? So at the moment we are in talks with a few banks to use Bagh-e as a SaaS model. And the way we're
Okay.
pitching it to them is, so look, let's say again, using an example, I'm not saying maybe, so let's say Mizan Bank does not have a branch in Haveri Lakha, right? So we will go to them and say, look, uh, the state bank is telling you to increase your agriculture portfolio. Haveri Lakha has a potential financing opportunity of X amount, right? To get that in the conventional sense, you'll have to build a branch, hire staff, XYZ. Why don't you use our digital, infrastructure and our on-ground people? We'll route the financing. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars. Let's run a pilot. Let's see how it works. We route your financing through our system, the input financing, all of that, increase yield. And, we offer our services like that, the data analytics and all of that stuff. Because for me, the most important thing right now is collecting good quality data. Because that tells me right now, if on a Western, not 100%, but let's say from other countries, we take like, okay, in a soil type and weather like this, you need 3 bags of fertilizer. But if I have enough data over sustained crop cycles, I can say, hold on, I think the best time, according to this area in Pakistan, to put in fertilizer is this time when the weather is this much, the humidity is this much. So we work in both ways. So that to increase yields, to reduce risk, and to also route financing for banks and financial institutions because bankers are great at what they do, even me, right? Like I said, I have a co-founder who started off with 50 acres of land and now has 1,000+ acres under cultivation. I had to work humbly with a person and he's a University of Toronto alumni, so an educated person who understands farming. So we had to work together. So I understand the financing bit. I will not sit here and claim that I'm a farmer or I'm an agri expert. You see, and bankers should know the same. Yes, you can understand the risk of a thing, but it takes time to understand, okay, there are two farmers from the same area, same village. What are the risks between them? Why do I prefer one over the other? I'll give you another example, and this is something we're working on as well, which is satellite imaging. And I'll tell you why. Because we did not, the previous cycle, the cycle before that, we went to a farmer and we did the soil type, you see, soil test. Now, soil test, we thought that, the soil is the same, right? Which was, again, a learning. I'll tell you this, how we learn. Right? So imagine if he has 10 acres, we did 2 acres, over 3 acres, we just took one or two soil samples, right? And we said, okay, this is great soil. But what we didn't realize was towards the back of that land, it was salinity, which is soil had a lot of salt content because there was seepage from the river and stuff, right? And nothing grew. So we gave them financing of I think 7 acres, out of which 4 acres was good, and the remaining 3 acres was below par yield. And then we had to share loss because we are Sharia compliant and a musharaka, right? So nothing teaches you a lesson more than loss or the pain you have to go through when you have to share loss. That's an example. So bankers, even me as a finance guy, I wouldn't know that, right? So with satellite imagery, what happens is you can get an idea of the entire land. So we can say, okay, you have 10 acres of land, you can only finance 5 acres or 6 acres.
Thank you, Mujtaba. It was genuinely a privilege to have someone with this breadth of experience across policy, academia, and enterprise with us today.
My
So,
pleasure.
at the end, I must thank you for such a rich and grounded conversation. It's indeed rare to hear someone speak so fluently, equal fluency across policy, academia, and topmost the realities of building something on the ground for small holder farmers. To
Thanks, my
everyone
pleasure.
who has joined us today, thank you for your time and your questions and your presence. On behalf of Al-Sadiq Institute, this brings us to the end of today's session. Jazakallah khair to everyone and have a wonderful rest of your day. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.